You know what? This is it. Come over here and say it. Yeah, that's what I thought. Hello, my name is Sophia-Helene, nice to treat, and this is about 10 minutes from turning into a very special episode of Burning Questions. To all of my viewers in the US, Finland, Canada, the UK, Ireland, Switzerland, Germany, Australia, the Netherlands, New Zealand, and India, I would like to say good morning. Hyvää huomenta. Bon matin. Goedemorgen. Guten Morgen. Goedemorgen. And Shubhravat. As you can see, things have started to take a downward spiral here, which, I mean, I get it. The contempt is a perfectly reasonable reaction to that suit. I get that, but burrito arse. Oh my god, I've been set up. Oh, shut up, dildo. We all know you did it. No, I'm being serious. I got set up. They did not believe me. There might have been a riot, and I might definitely have been put in solitary confinement, which is actually a good thing. They won't find my cellmate for a little bit yet. Look, the guy threatened to attack me in the bathroom.
He had it coming. He had it coming. He only had himself to blame.
There. Somebody shivved him 27 times in the eye with a sharpened toothbrush. Anyway, doesn't matter. So long as I've got this camera that I hit way, way up my butt. Got some letters from you guys. So what do you say we get into it, huh? A lot of ink has been spilled on whether or not conversion therapy is actually torture. The 1998 Rome Convention of the International Criminal Court defines torture as the intentional infliction of severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, upon the person in the custody or under the control of the accused, except that torture shall not include pain or suffering arising only from inherent in or incidental to lawful sanctions. This definition is quite a bit narrower in most respects, but broader in its applicability than the 1987 UN Convention on Torture, Inhumane, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, which, by the letter of its statute, seems to say that only government officials can torture somebody, and that excludes religious leaders, parents, terrorists, gangs, etc., from actually even being able to commit torture. So that's where the international law stands, and most people are either on board with one, with the Torture Convention, or the Rome Convention, one or the other. The actual process of conversion therapy meets these definitions pretty easily, and they involve a lot of physical and mental anguish. But that's not really important here, because this question was actually about the damage done. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence to go along with the heaping helping of scientific evidence that this treatment is ineffective. And there's also a number of anecdotes that discuss life after conversion therapy. And I'm not going to talk too much about it here because it's uncharacteristically triggery stuff. But suffice it to say, it's incredibly unpleasant. Links are in the description. Content warning, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of suicidal ideation, and no small amount of suicide. So I guess the short version is conversion therapy is the single worst thing you can do to somebody that you claim to love. So for those who aren't aware, in 399 BCE, Socrates was accused of impiety and of corrupting the youth of Athens. His trial was recorded by Plato, who was a student of Socrates, and also by Xenophon the historian. So a little context. Athens had recently rid themselves of the curse of the general Alcibiades. Very funny video on that issue here. And his antics probably would have been a lot funnier if they hadn't gotten 50,000 people killed for essentially no reason based on very bad generaling. That said, the conventional contemporary wisdom is that it was a sham trial based on sham evidence, and he was forced to drink a beverage that was laced with the poison hemlock by means of execution, or by way of execution. So you could see how Athenian society, after having rid itself of the oligarchy that Alcibiades established, again in the video, to avoid a death sentence for the maiming of the Herms, which were sacred monuments to Hermes dotted around Athens the night before his disastrous Sicilian expedition left. You could see how Athenian society was a little bit leery of people who rocked the boat, and Socrates rocked the boat. So the question of should Socrates have been found innocent or guilty is difficult, because it also begs the question, was Socrates guilty? Was he guilty of impiety? I don't know, probably a little bit. Was he guilty of corrupting the youth of Athens? That is an objectively impossible standard to prove. There's no way to determine that. So should Socrates have died? Should Socrates have been executed? Now that's an interesting question. Keep in mind that Socrates was no fan of democracy, and that, again, the oligarchy that Alcibiades established had been overthrown not that long ago. So if you're a student of the Western tradition, and especially coming from the American perspective, it's very easy to land in a place where you can view Socrates' death, though regrettable, as necessary for the preservation of democracy. Quit being a classist douche is, basically the moral of the story. Speaking of classist douches, this question comes from Lily Patterson. Looks like somebody's been playing some Armored Core.
Nobody gets that reference, man.
Thanks, I'll take that under consideration. Should I take that under consideration? Anyway, this is the problem with unrestrained capitalism. It opens the door for corporate feudalism. I've spoken before about my interpretation of the evolution of class struggle through the broadest possible lens of classical Marxist conflict theory, to wit that the proletariat and the bourgeoisie and a conflict between them was watered down by the introduction of the middle class and the idea of upward mobility, which was shoehorned in between the class structures as a patronizing mollification dressed up as an amelioration. And it also forces the onus onto the proletariat for not working hard enough to be successful. By abrogating responsibility for the flaws inherent and the inequalities inherent in the capitalist system, the capitalist industrialist class has averted the public's gaze away from them and their I'm about to say something very controversial. And I'm sorry, and bear with me because this is not easy for me to say. Thank God for Elon Musk. Okay, wait. I know. I hear it too. But hear me out. Dark Elon, with his silly Twitter feuds, has kept our gaze fixed. Some might almost say transfixed on capitalist industrialists. And every time he goes on one of his drug-fueled Twitter rants, he brings our attention back to these problems. And every time he says something, some ignorant nonsense that only somebody who has never been poor would say or think, he reminds us that these people do exist, and they are very powerful, and they are very rich. Now, good news. We have very strong labor unions in this country. We have a blended capitalist socialist system that prevents these things from technically being possible. Now, the bad news, the corporatist industrialist class will stop at nothing, and they have almost unlimited resources to strip power away from that governing body that is supposed to keep them in line. So, I guess it's technically possible, Lily, but it's not currently feasible. Oh, sweet, mealtime. Best part of solitary living? No cafeteria. Place is very sexual and violent. Hey, Eric. Why is there a rat dead in my food? And does this rat have a tattoo? Oh my god. We know about... Oh, my bunkmate. You won't live long enough to regret ride or die for... Oh my god. Well, things here seem to have taken a nasty left turn. Special thanks to Scarlett DeLeon and Lily Patterson and Jan Meyer for making the show possible. Please like and subscribe to the video. And if you want to see more and better content, visit Patreon, link in the description. You can ask a question, an audience question like the one we saw today from Lily, if you subscribe at any level on Patreon. Also in the description are links to more of my work at Vocal and Cora. And guys, I gotta get